Hello, everybody. This is Old Buck Dave again. Welcome to episode 119 of the Two Old Bucks. Is Mr. Dale there? I'm hoping.
Old Buck Dale is
okay. We're
all in
full force again. As we warned you, we have a special episode today that we're really excited about. We gave you a little heads up on this episode at the end of last week's episode, and pretty soon we'll bring in our guest author. But first, another thing that we're trying for 2023, we want to make it as easy as possible for you to contact us, and we're plugging in a new option. So if you download the Bucks through our website, you can go to the bottom of our liner notes, or show notes as everybody else calls them, and you will see how you can click to leave a voice message for us. All you have to do is click on that on your computer, and a little microphone will pop up, and we'll say hi, and then you can reply. And that's another way you can make a comment, question, whatever. So we're still working on how to make that work. If you download through Apple or Google or Spotify, that's a place where most of the people are downloading us. But anyway, try it. You might like it. Who knows? And now I'd like to welcome Bridey Thelen-Heidel, who will be reading her story, We Owned the Night. Hi, Bridey. How are you?
Hi, thank you. Nice to talk to you all.
Yeah, welcome to the Two Old Bucks. How's your world out there? How's the weather?
Yeah, the world is a little crazy. I have a one-story house, and all the snow came off the roof last night. So we are officially living in an igloo here in Lake Tahoe.
Wow, that's a lot of snow.
It is. It's almost 20 feet in my front yard. No joke.
20 feet.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. That's like a lifetime's worth. That's like 40 lifetimes worth in Florida. I don't think we'll get 20 feet ever. But anyway, so I'm glad you could fight the snow and make it here tonight. As I mentioned on last week's episode, I found your writing a year or so ago. It was a draft story you did on the Tahoe Writers Works website. And I was really blown away both by your style and the content of it. And our listeners are going to get a taste of that shortly. And so I know you're a writer. I know you're an award-winning teacher, but I don't know much more about you. So tell us more about yourself.
I'm incredibly flattered that you connected with my story and felt like it was something you wanted to share with your listeners. So I do. I live here in Lake Tahoe with my husband and my daughter, and I've been teaching high school English for 24 years. I am known in the community as a pretty fierce youth advocate, and particularly for LGBT plus youth. And I've had that work written about in California Educator, and also Read This, Save Lives, a teacher's guide to creating safe spaces. So that is me.
Great. You teach writing, English, correct?
I do. Yeah, I started teaching in 1998, and I really love it. I never planned on being a teacher, but my background really gave me a strong foundation for understanding at-risk youth, and teaching is definitely my calling.
Okay. So you like your day job?
I do like my day job. Yes, I love my day job. I don't, it's a hard job right now. It's a hard job post-COVID. It's a hard job with all the threats of school violence and shootings. And, to be honest, we do more gun drills than we do fire drills, and that can be hard.
Wow.
But the kids are great.
It's a different world today, huh? Okay, so you've been a teacher for a long time, and did you always want to be a writer, or is that something that happened recently?
I did. I journaled when I was young. I had diaries, to vent really about my crappy life, and there came a time in my 20s when I felt like I just had a lot of stories about my life, and some of them were unbelievable, slightly outlandish. And so I started writing drafts of them. Really nothing serious until about, 2019, actually. I had a dream come true, and I got to meet, it's going to sound silly, but I got to meet the British pop band Duran Duran. And
well, you got to tell us more about this.
It's pretty teenager, but their music really got me through some hard times as a kid, and I just really wanted to thank them. So it took a couple decades. It took this entire community. It took Ellen DeGeneres. There was a lot involved, but I actually got to meet the band, and that turned out to be a happy ending for a book I had in mind. And so the next morning, September 14th, 2019, I sat down and I started writing my memoir, and started turning over really crappy first drafts, as Anne Lamott calls them.
Yeah.
How a writer's works. Yeah. And here I am 3.5 years later with a memoir. So yeah, I'm a writer now, I guess.
That's an interesting story. So Duran Duran was your inspiration. That's fascinating.
They get quite a bit of, they get a bit of the book for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you started writing it, was it kind of like notes to myself, or did you think, well, maybe I'd like to get this in front of the public someday?
Most of us who are writing a memoir, there's probably a little nudge in the back of our heads that it would be something we'd want to share somehow, some way. But really, I feel like for me, memoir was really, it's been an exorcism for sure.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's pretty cliche. Your friends are like, wow, you have a great story, you should write it down. And I just really wasn't convinced that it needed to go anywhere other than the writing group or my close friends, until I turned over about 9 or 10 chapters to a teacher in my English department who's also a writer. And after reading it, he said it really helped him to see his students a bit differently and to see the ones who really present well, the honor students like I was.
Mm-hmm.
And I just never really imagined my story helping teachers, which is ironic because my story has helped me be a great teacher. But that's when I realized that I think I could share this story, and I think it would actually really be helpful. Yeah.
So how did you develop your style of writing? Did you a lot of help from other people, or told people saying I like this, I don't like that, or was it just always you?
Kids are honest. So I had turned over some early drafts to my daughter, and she's 21 now, and she was like, yeah, Mom, that doesn't sound like you at all. And I think it was the English teacher in me having to get out of the way because, there were a lot of semicolons and and big fancy words. And yeah, I think like anybody writing, it took drafts and drafts and drafts and hours of reading aloud and rewriting and stopping myself when I realized I'd moved out of my head and into somebody else's voice and maybe trying too hard. And for me, I know at the beginning I was trying to sound like Maya Angelou for sure, but it's not my voice. And I definitely have found my voice now, although the book voice and the weekly blog I write, and the magazines I've been submitting to, very different voice, because the blog and magazine essays and all of that's my voice now.
Mm-hmm.
The book, the memoir, was written in the present tense. So it's all of my voices as I'm growing up.
Okay.
So yeah, the voice is really young when I'm 5, 6, 7 years old. It gets a little older, as I grow up, but it's definitely not as snarky and wise as I am in my blogs.
Okay. But how about when did you get involved with the Tahoe Writers Works?
So the same teacher I had given those early drafts to, he had suggested Bruce Reddick and Tahoe Writers Works when I told him that I was going to write some stories down. And so I went to the group for a couple months before I submitted anything. And then, and I can tell you, Dave, because you've been to that group, they are an incredibly talented, supportive group of writers and editors and poets. And they gave me honest feedback. They gave me the good, the bad, the ugly. And especially, I had some creative use of commas for a while. The first piece I submitted, I was terrified, especially at the time I was the head of our English department. And, there's a lot of pressure to be a solid writer. I had taught Bruce Reddick's children, and won all these awards, right, as an English teacher. And so it's like, put up or shut up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have to agree with you on the Tahoe Writers Works. I was fortunate enough to spend some time, and I think it was 2017, maybe 2018, and I found them on the web, and I attended a couple of their sessions, and I got to say it's the best writers group I've ever attended. the quality of the writing by the people, the feedback, the feedback system there is fantastic. So, hats off to them for sure.
A lot of published writers in that group, and a
Right.
lot of,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's what I was, we've had people come in who've been screenwriters, and they've, one woman, she wrote for 80 sitcoms. I mean, it's the real deal, but it's also really encouraging of new writers and new voices, and always looking for new people to join. So, it's an excellent group, and we're doing Zoom right now. So any listeners out there who want to join us, you're welcome to, from anywhere you are.
Well, we can at the end of the in our show notes, in our liner notes, we can put a link to the Tahoe Writers Works there. So do you like to write at night? Do you write at lunchtime at school? Is there anything that works best for you?
I'm a mom, and I feel like early morning is the best because life kind of needs me after school. So I've got dinner and laundry and cat boxes to clean and all that. And I also write. I've also been writing about pretty sensitive stuff, really tough memories. So I feel like, early on when I was really bringing all of those memories back up, it was helpful to be alone in the quiet hours of the morning. And I definitely still write from about 4 to 7 a.m., 5 to 7 a.m. every day.
Wow.
Before school. And then I write at night for a couple hours. And on the weekends, I write 8 to 10 hours. And this is because, I'm not published yet, right? So I'm building a platform, which means I'm writing the blog, I'm writing to magazines, I'm editing the book down because it's 100,000 words right now. And we know it should be somewhere between 80 and 90.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just have a lot of writing to do. I write longhand too. Some.
Okay, so you start longhand, and then
I do write. Writing longhand is really helpful for accessing memory. And it's also just a great way if I'm circling or underlining or annotating, it's really helpful. So I actually have my students, when they're writing their personal narratives for college applications, I always have them start with pen and paper.
Interesting.
And yeah, and then when I edit, I was actually doing that today. I print out, I think it's just the English teacher in me. I print out copy and I have a red pen, real old school, and I edit. So I definitely am known for a red pen. So I edit my own work on paper with a red pen.
Okay. That's definitely the teacher in you.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's real bad.
Well, listen, let me ask one more question here. I don't know, Dale, you can certainly jump in here, buddy. Favorite authors? I always like to ask people who their favorite authors or favorite books. What you're reading right now? What's the last thing you read? What do you recommend? That sort of thing. So, what do you think?
Well, so I teach 12th grade AP literature, and I have a couple books. I'm sure I should change it up, but I really love Song of Solomon. So I teach that every year. I also teach Heart of Darkness, which, people love it or hate it. I just really love that writing. I love Joseph Conrad's writing. The book I just read, so I finished Bruce Reddick's memoir, Refraction. And so I just finished that, and that was his time spent up working on the Alaska pipeline. And it's a great book. And then part of the nonfiction proposal process, for anybody who's interested in that, is you have to find comparable titles. So I have read a lot of memoirs that have been published in the last 3 or 4 years. And one that I love so much, I think she initially self-published and then was agented, but her name is Bobby Kahn, and she wrote a book called In the Shadow of the Valley. And it is, it's a tough read, but it's really strong.
Could you spell that last name for me? I'll put that in the notes.
Sure. So her name is Bobi, and her last name is Conn, Conn, and it's In the Shadow of the Valley. It's a great book. Great book.
Okay, I'll link that. I'll put a link to that in the show notes here. See if somebody's interested in reading it. That's great. So listen, we're going to move on to the next phase here, where in a minute or so we're going to be asking you to read your story. We Owned the Night, from your memoir, Bright Eyes. I want to give just a quick warning here to our listeners. The story is about domestic violence, and there's some brief, strong language. So just forewarning you. Having said that, Two Old Bucks present Bridey Thelen-Heidel, reading We Owned the Night.
Those who know me recognize my smile is too tight, not nearly enough teeth showing. I'm faking it because the woman taking the photo wants to believe we're happy. My baby sister is too young to understand we're pretending, so she isn't. The look in her eyes would become one I'd see too many nights from under our bed where I taught her to hide until the monsters were finished smashing mirrors and breaking each other. Come on, I'd whisper, searching the dark for her hand. They're asleep. Let's go eat. My sister would scurry out from under the bed, pink silky bunny blanket in hand, and we'd tiptoe over broken glass to the kitchen. We owned the night after the monsters passed out. Hushed whispers, spreading cheap peanut butter on cheaper white bread that ripped. We giggled and danced in the moonlight streaming through the kitchen window. Just the two of us, building castles in the sky. What happens to little kids when childhood hopscotches over us or runs faster than we do and stays just out of reach from being tagged? I saw childhood from my window, kids riding 10 speeds without a baby seat on the back, playing hide and seek as a game, not as a strategy to survive, and a dad carrying a little one on his shoulders while I carried the world on mine. I watched childhood on television, girls giggling about boys and makeup and slumber parties, reminding me of the time a friend slept over, but climbed out my bedroom window in the middle of the night because the monster screaming in the other room scared her. I was jealous of her, not only for having a place to run away to, but because she still felt like she could be scared. She was 10, and 10-year-olds are allowed to be scared, calling out to their parents to check under the bed and in the closet, and then insisting they leave the lights on and the door open. I'd outgrown scared. No time for it. I knew humiliation, though. Watching my friend run home in the dark, I wondered if she'd wait until Monday to tell the kids at school, or if she'd get a couple girls on a party line tomorrow to gossip about the ugly truth I'd exhausted myself hiding from them. What childhood lessons are lost while we're studying to be adults? I spent my childhood learning the real tests of real life, how to push the stabbing metal pin through the thick cloth diaper without poking the baby's skin, how to read a WIC coupon because you don't want to be embarrassed when the grocery clerk corrects you in line. You can't have that cereal, honey. It's not on the list. Where's your mom to help you? How to enroll ourselves without transcripts at our 16th school, and we're only in 8th grade. How to take care of a baby who doesn't know you're her sister and calls you mama, because that is who you are to her. And the most frustrating test of all, how to parent the grown-ups who've made rebelling against you a game, because you're so boring, Bridey. Lighten the fuck up. They peel out of the driveway in the Smokey and Bandit Trans Am they bought instead of better groceries. Hysterical, they've left you to lie when their bosses call and ask why they haven't shown up to work. There were adults who I think saw my lost childhood. Neighbors, teachers, family friends, relatives. But dysfunction's deceit is its ability to disguise itself as fine and okay. Concerned adults dismissed their own instincts and disregarded their worries because we, the ones waiting and wanting to be rescued, are conditioned to cover up the clues before anyone suspects. And when they do, we move again. Adults only saw what I let them see, what I was allowed to show them. This is why I don't blame them for insulting me with their compliments. You're very mature for your age. I wish my kid was as grown up as you are. You're so responsible. I envy the adjectives I used in my Red Velvet Diary about why their compliments hurt me. Innocent, unaware, ignorant. I prayed, to whom I wasn't sure, to be as naive as other girls my age. laughing at drunk parents making fools of themselves, rather than counting the beers left in the fridge or weighing the box of wine in my hand to know when the night would end. Knowing I preferred cocaine to meth, because one kept the monsters awake all night, playing loud music and sewing my Barbie's new outfits, while the other peeled their eyes open for days, beating each other and destroying our house. I was 11 in this photo and just beginning to realize some people don't want to be rescued and some people can't be saved. But I could save this baby and myself. In the decade that followed, my little sister would block most of our memories, and I don't blame her. As her big sister, it was my job to remember for both of us. She deserved a witness, deserved to know none of it was her fault, deserved to feel she was loved and protected, because I wanted to teach her how to love and protect herself. Decades of harrowing nights and disappeared days burned an ulcer in my belly until they finally ended up on the page. Dysfunction, abuse, and poverty are arguably unoriginal topics, but I'm hoping other kids who watched childhood happen out their windows or on television will realize that when they hid under their beds and fought their monsters, they weren't as alone as they felt. There was an army of other brave little ones waiting in the dark for glass to stop shattering, for sirens to quiet, and for the calm after the storm. Because after the monsters passed out, we owned the night.
Wow. Thank you. That's an amazing story. I read that probably 3, 4, 5 times, but to listen to you tell your own story there, it gives me goosebumps. It really does.
Hey, Dave.
Yes, sir.
To hear the author read the story is powerful.
Yeah.
And I was wondering that perhaps it's the adults that need to read this. If they were, caught up in that, maybe they get a feel for what actually happens to the kids.
Yeah.
So, but I have a question for Bridey. Bridey, at about what age did you start to realize that you could change your life or you would survive that kind of an upbringing?
Yeah, I think what happens is, at least in my case, you just wake up every day, and waking up every day and realizing that there's another chance, there's another opportunity. I think I became really aware of it probably around 9 or 10, 11, that every day was another start, and I think something that happens with addicts is there's kind of an amnesia that happens every morning, and everybody pretends like the night before didn't happen because you don't want to make anybody mad and you don't want to talk about it, right? The elephant in the room. And so everybody plays into this gaslighting. Everybody agrees to it, spoken or unspoken. You just don't talk about it. So I think I started to realize, about 9 or 10, that I could figure out a way. My body also decided to recover and created actually a dissociative disorder when I was little. And that was definitely a way that I survived a lot of it. My body just detached from my mind. So I think that also, I read in the National Alliance for Mental Illness. I didn't really figure this out until, honestly, I was writing the book, but National Alliance on Mental Illness says that about 75% of us will have some type of dissociative disorder in our lives, depending on a traumatic situation or something. And there's about 2% of the population that has a very chronic form of it, which is after you have gone through a lot of emotional and physical sexual abuse, that you can completely disassociate. And that is what I did for sure. By 10 or 11, I was completely out of my body and saw myself really as a movie, and would go to the extent when things were really bad in my house, I would leave my body and fly up outside of the house, and I could see the neighborhood, and I could see cops coming, and it's a pretty wild experience. But when you detach like that, it saves you in a lot of ways.
That's the way you survived.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Were you motivated? You had a younger sibling, correct?
Yes.
And were you? It sounded to me like you might have been motivated considerably by trying to help your sister.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's a parent's role too, right? I jumped right into a parent's role and took care of her, and so sacrificed myself a lot for that. And that's where that, that very gray area between being a mom and a sister. I actually have several sisters now, and so there were a few other kids who came after that baby, and but she and I were really the closest, and she is the one who was with me during a lot of really tough times. But all of those girls dealt with some pretty heavy stuff too.
So how is your
Wow.
sister? How is your sister now? How are the other siblings now?
So the sister who's in the photo, for those of you who link to that, she just turned 40 actually yesterday.
Well,
So
happy.
yeah, so that baby is 40, and she is doing really well. She has two sweet little boys, and she's a wonderful person, and we're super close. And I do know I'm her sister now and not her mom. And she's doing great.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Can you talk about?
I think that's excuse me, Dale. I think that's it's really a fantastic story. And something else caught my ear when you say you write a lot. Does all the writing go somewhere? I mean, does it go into like an inventory of thoughts or on this, that, or the other thing, or you send it to people to be published? I mean, if you're writing even a couple hours a day, which I know is a lot of work.
Yeah, right now, the blog I write, it definitely takes 4 or 5 hours a week to write that blog entry for me. And then I have some magazines I'm submitting to, and those pieces take definitely 20 hours to write a solid piece for me, that's 1,500, 2,000 words. I'm not a fast writer. I can write a draft really fast, but my editing is pretty slow. And yeah, so everything does have a purpose. I'm kind of beyond journaling and stuff at this point. I sit down and I have like a writing prompt for a magazine or a writing prompt for I just auditioned for a piece, a show in New York. And so I had a task for that. But yeah, I'm still new enough. It takes me a long time. Like I have friends who are professional writers, and I don't know how they just sit down and write an article and they're like, oh, 2 hours and I'm done. I'm definitely not that fast.
Could you do you have a relationship with your parents today? Is that something you can talk about?
Two dads, and my dads were really wonderful men, and they've both since passed on. They weren't really in the picture though, so they didn't really know what was going on until I was older and I shared with them, and they were both just devastated that they weren't able to protect me. But that was me as a teenager, just not letting it in. I do not have a relationship with my mom. I have not spoken to her in 20 years, since my daughter turned a year old. And I've had a couple emails with her, but not real communication. I did hear that she's reading the blog, so I'm sure that's an interesting experience for her.
Yeah.
I do purposely not use her name, or even I've never even written the word mom on the page, or anyone's name there. But so I think she might be getting to know me and herself a little bit from reading the blog. Yeah, there just came a point where I had to move away from the fantasy of having a mom. So it's kind of dramatic, but I buried her and I grieved her, and I do really wish her the best. And I've forgiven her, although she doesn't know that. But forgiveness is really about us, right? Just releasing ourselves from things.
Absolutely.
I have compassion for her struggles, but I just don't feel obligated to share them, and I definitely know I can't fix them. So, and again, that parent thing, she was not going to influence my daughter's life. So that's been the choice I made about that.
Okay. Hey, listen, changing gears a little bit here. You mentioned your blog a couple times. Tell us about your blog. We will put a link to it in the show notes, but tell us a little bit about your blog.
6 months ago. And it was really advice I got from, I had the good fortune of having Alice Anderson do a developmental edit of my book. And she is a best-selling author herself for her memoir. She did the edit and she really loved my book, which was great. And she suggested I start promoting it even before having it published as a way to build interest.
Mm-hmm.
And so, even though I thought it was really premature, she said, just start writing about topics covered in your memoir. And so the memoir has been really, really well received. I mean, incredible, actually. I've had close to 13,000 visits to the site, which in my mind is big. The agent said, call us when it's 100,000, but I'm really excited about 13,000. And I've had 3,000 just in the past month. So it's gaining traction and people are connecting to it. And I've had, one of the most shocking, I had some lawyers who defend children in domestic violence cases, and I found out that they're reading it. And I have counselors and therapists and teachers and a lot of people reading the blog. So it means a lot to my healing and hopefully for theirs as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. You never know where those links are going to go and how people are going to discover you and find common ground with you or appreciate what you're sharing with them, for sure.
Yeah, it's been really, really wonderful and surprising.
Hey, listen, I'll ask you, we got one or two more questions here. So how did you and Mother find each other? Mother Magazine, where the story is published here.
There's a writer named William Knower, and he wrote a book called Fearless Writing that I used as a resource when I was writing the memoir. And he has a show called Author to Author, and it's a blog to radio kind of thing. And anyway, he had an author on there who had submitted her work to Mother. So I looked it up and thought, this is absolutely perfect for We Own the Night. And they have been really supportive and really wonderful about it.
So what's next? I know you want to get your book published, right? So that's probably taken a fair amount of your time too, getting people.
Yeah, it's a part-time job for sure. It is hours and hours of researching agents, and so continuing the journey to publish Bright Eyes is definitely what's happening right now, and writing to magazines and, like I said, publications. And I've been getting invited, to this podcast, and I've been invited to speak publicly about child abuse, about surviving, about writing. So, agents and traditional publishing would lead you to believe, I guess, there's really no one who wants to read these stories. Dysfunction and abuse are kind of played out topics for some, but the response I'm getting seems to disagree. So I feel like I'm just going to keep moving forward. And there's a really interesting, the agents I just pitched last month, they were all really complimentary about my writing and my story, and just said, because I'm not a celebrity, I just don't have a shot to publish traditionally. Yeah, it's a little disheartening, but I appreciated them being honest. And I've queried about 35 agents, and I feel like, if you're not a celebrity, the stories, it's much harder, and I don't have a huge platform. So I did find out about hybrid publishing. So I've not been interested in doing self-publishing for a lot of reasons, but hybrid publishing sounds really interesting, and I'm starting to look into that. So I'd love to have the book out in the next year, and I feel like that is a way that I could do it.
Okay, wonderful. Listen, I said we'd put a link to your story in Mother Magazine. We'll put a link to your blog, and you're on Twitter, I found out. So we can also put a link to your Twitter. Are you a Facebooker as well, or?
All of it. Got to do all of it now as a writer. I think it's so ironic. Writers, I think, tend to be somewhat introverted, and now you have to be an introvert and extrovert because you have to put yourself out there everywhere.
There you go. Well, listen, we'd like to give many thanks to you, Bridey, and certainly best wishes on you and your book. we really we're happy that you agreed to do this with us. We hope to talk to you again. And I'm going to make a prediction now. We have our prediction, our results at the end of the year. I'm guessing that you're going to be in our top 5 of 2023. What do you think, Del?
What a pleasure. Yeah, what a pleasure. It's a real honor to have someone like yourself on our little podcast. Yeah. So we wish you all the best, certainly.
I really, really appreciate this, and I'm just so excited to chat with you and to share. So thank you very much for being my first podcast ever.
Okay, great. Great.
We're honored. We're honored.
You're honored. Okay. Okay, we're going to wrap it up here, folks. Thank you very much. This is Old Buck Dave.
Yeah, this is Old Buckdale saying thank you very much.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.